And I want to welcome everybody into the Fifth Dimension podcast, where we are attempting to live more mindfully in the day to day. Quite simply, make this world a little bit of a better place. Now, I'm your host, Evan McDermott, and I want to thank you for tuning into this episode. And the question at hand today is, does individualism, and in particular, Western rugged individualism, prevent us from thinking of ourselves as more of a collective identity, one human race? Now, the United States, and you could argue Western nations in general that follow this sort of capitalistic material approach, the strength has always sort of been this rugged individualistic mindset where anybody can make it in the world if you work hard enough. And, that perceives a sense of self, a sense of identity within that. So psychologically, it's really attractive to a lot of people. Now, the shadow side to this is that rugged individualism legitimizes what I would say sort of a rugged narcissism within it. And this is sort of infected with a malignant consciousness of that it's all about me, sort of disregarding others to make it to the top. And we see that as it's a competitive world. And so sort of sociopathic ethos has sort of become infused within our society and within our economic system. And I argue with the recent coronavirus, this individualistic and material falsehood has come crashing down in front of our very eyes, right? And we see more of a calling to return to community, to return to a collective identity. And what more are we right now than a collective identity, known as human beings, attempting to weather the storm of the current pandemic? What more are we? I mean, look around and you will see the beauties of human nature, genuine connection, and being of service to others, whether it be those on the front lines with doctors and nurses, who are putting their lives on the line themselves, or whether you see fundraising efforts by individuals attempting to, maybe they don't have a lot themselves, but they raise all this money to help those in need. So I think there's this communal battle that we're facing with this pandemic, and it's brought a lot of people together. And what aspects of our previous society, rugged individualism, do we see in the pandemic? We can ask ourselves this, and I think it's very clear. We see hoarding of resources, which, someone's hoarding a bunch of toilet paper. It's viewed as shameful. Calling it the Chinese virus, that's another example of this sort of previous mindset we're living in. And, nationhood is just a human construct anyways. Obviously, this affects everybody, regardless of race, religion, where you're from, sexual orientation, all of those things. And sort of, if you're not following social distancing guidelines because you feel this invincibility immunity, then that's another aspect of rugged individualism and this sort of competitiveness that exists because of the society we live in. And we, like I said, we almost sort of shame these people. Like, it's shameful to see when it's happening, and people will take great offense to that if they're called out on it. So my question is, are we going to return to this rugged individualism upon completion of the pandemic, upon its, shall we say, reckoning, whenever that may be? And I think we have a choice to make. Rugged individualism is what got us here in the first place, right? So to answer this, I do believe we need to analyze who did this method serve previously. What group of people in the world benefit from, let's say, industrialization? Is hoarding billions of dollars really any different than hoarding rolls of toilet paper? Toilet paper is our most valuable commodity. It's our most valuable asset. I went to the store this morning right when it opened, and they had one pallet of toilet paper, and I grabbed the 24 pack and I felt like a king. It equates to life for a lot of people right now. Food, toilet paper, things such as that. In the previous society, money equates to life. And that is what you make your livelihood off of. And it's a competitive society. So are we going to be competitive with our sources of life like we previously have been and leave millions behind? I mean, is it not ludicrous that there are 500,000 homeless people on any given night in the United States, yet we have 1.5 million vacant properties? You could house everybody and yet still have a million vacant properties. So is this not a byproduct of a subconscious sociopathic economic obsession of the rugged individual? I mean, I think it's a great question to analyze. Our previous livelihood sort of only served those who struck gold financially and sort of held this external power. And there's a very limited amount of people who can actually make it here. Money is power. You look at the wealthiest people in the world, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and all of our politicians. They hold tremendous amounts of power over the rest of us. And it's because they simply have more financial assets. And the rest of us are essentially slaves to this sort of constructed power structure, if you will. There's no freedom to live in a reality that is outside of that power structure, and it's very difficult to find a way to do that. So what is even freedom when you have no option but to abandon the principles of who you are and to live in an us versus them society? I don't know if that is true freedom. I don't know if you're working a 9 to 5 that you simply hate and you're struggling to pay your bills and you're taking all this medication and you simply, like, what freedom is within that? You're simply funding this external power source for these 1% individuals. Freedom is sort of found from detaching from these constructs, finding ways to live outside of the constructs, and exploring who you are and who you are supposed to be and what your passions are and what you're supposed to be doing with your life. And only you can answer those questions. It's going to be different for every single person. We all have unique talents and capabilities, as I've said before. I feel more free right now in this moment than I ever have in my entire life. And it's because we have sort of lost this rugged individualistic society and we have a little more freedom to construct what our reality is looking like. Certainly it is limited. We need to follow particular guidelines pertaining to social distancing and keeping everybody safe. However, this is a time for exploration for me, for creativity, for looking for ways to connect and feel love. So, should we not live in a society that promotes that anyways, that embraces the commonalities of human nature, which is love and compassion, which exists within everybody, but also sort of respects the individual differences of self-exploration and creativity and self-expression? What would a society like that look like? I challenge you to think of an answer like that, because I think that's what we need to move towards if we're going to avoid situations like this in the future. And imagine the level of humanity you see now with the focus on well-being and service to others, not in a time of pandemic. We've been living like this before. If we had been living like this before, we would have been vastly more prepared for a pandemic to strike and cause a mass disruption to livelihood. It may not have even caused a mass disruption. I think it's safe to say we all know our society is going to be changed forever because of this. There are going to be differences. It's difficult to predict just what that's going to be. I don't think there will be a return to normalcy because of the vast structural flaws free market rugged individualism has shown. The normal we had was precisely the problem itself. So we have two directions we can head in, and the first one I'm very weary of, because tends to what happens if you think about disasters or pandemics. Sort of an authoritarian power grab by those who have the external power now. We're already starting to see measures and laws of this taking place. Those in power see what gave them the external power is slipping, the structure. And so what are they going to do? They're going to re-up that, use extreme acts and measures to double down on a previous way of living, and make it more authoritarian in nature. And you think post 9/11, right? You have how the government sort of played us. You have the Patriot Act, and we go to war to Iraq, and there's just all of this just power grab by the government. And I think we're going to see a very similar thing take place now. And we need to be very weary at what we allow our government to control. A lot of people feel vulnerable. A lot of people feel scared that the normal has been swept up from under them. So how do we reach this sort of stage of not allowing this to take place and demanding we move to a society more run on humane principles instead of a capitalistic greed. We will allow authoritarianism simply through complacency, not looking to better ourselves, embracing sort of the society as it was and wanting to simply return to comfort, and not willing to embrace sort of the exploration that comes with that. And exploration is certainly frightening. It's an unknown. We're taught to fear an unknown. However, to grow as people, as individuals, as a society, we need to start looking into that unknown directly and finding ways to, create a better world. So I think what we need is a new definition on human rights. Physiological needs being met, whether that be housing, food, things such as this nature, water. That's a human right. Everybody on Earth should have that. We have the resources to make that happen. So let's assure that everybody has housing. Let's assure that everybody has food. Let's assure that everybody has water. And everybody is taken care of as their physiological needs are being met. And I think another human right is an ability to explore one's own consciousness. And that comes with exploration, whether it be through plant medicines or, doing things such as meditations, doing such things as exploring your passions, what it is that you want to do with your life, exploring who you are as a person on a deeper level beyond the society painted surface level. So, we have to work to reach this stage. It requires all of us to do what we can to not only be the best versions of ourselves, but sort of also to found our moral principles on a collective humanity, a collective identity, and sort of ensuring this new 21st century version of human rights is sort of met. As we continue to evolve as a species, we are growing as a species like every other species in nature. We evolve over time, and we are continuing to do that right in front of our very eyes. So we need to find ways to evolve with it in our society practices. What other species on this planet has such a level of self-awareness and yet does not go with the changing times and does not adapt to the world that's around them? If anything, this self-awareness is keeping us in arrogance and complacency because we're not using it for our own betterment. We're using it to collectively kill ourselves off by living in a rugged individualistic world. So, think about how you would like this world to look upon the completion of this pandemic, whenever that may be. We still got a lot of storm to weather. We still got a lot coming. So, certainly take care of yourselves and be healthy and be safe. But we need to start thinking about embracing a collective identity, embracing a common humanity, and finding a way to expand what it means to be a human and expand civil rights and expand what human rights are. So let's get rid of the sociopathic ethos that is infused within our society and infused within our economic system and replace it with a system of love and compassion and humanity. And we'll move forward. And I think it's a lot easier than we realize. So let's work towards that. If you want to help the show, PayPal's linked. Please give us a rating wherever you're listening or watching. I know it's on YouTube, it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Give us a rating, share it to the peoples. Check out more episodes. Find us on social media, Instagram, all that good stuff. And yeah, so I'm going to keep that part short today. And as I was saying, stay healthy, stay vibrant. It's a beautiful world out there, man. Go and explore it. That's what I'm going to do. See ya.